Hello, Internet. It is I, the Malik Aaron. Welcome back to my holiday 2019 box office predictions. And today, we're going to talk about Rise of Skywalker. Now, in order to understand Rise of Skywalker, we're going to have to go through the entire history of Star Wars. More specifically, the Disney era Star Wars. And I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of the whole thing because I don't feel like boring you all to death. So, here we go. In 1997, George Lucas made a movie. It was called Star Wars. Eventually, it got a New Hope subtitle, but at the time, it was just called Star Wars. And not only did it become a sci-fi classic, but also spawned a massive, and I do mean massive, franchise. What followed A New Hope were two sequels, and although George Lucas didn't direct these movies, he was still a part of the creative process. And those movies were Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. While Empire Strikes Back was also seen as a classic, Return of the Jedi, not so much. I mean, it was still good, but not quite on par with the first two movies. But still, overall, very solid trilogy. 16 years later, George Lucas decides to make a prequel trilogy, and that consists of The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. And he decided to write and direct these movies all by himself, which was not a great choice because Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones are both seen as terrible movies. And although the scores for them say, oh, they're not that bad, if you ask any random person what you think of Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, they're just going to say they're just bad movies, period. And I'd have to agree. Attack of the Clones is just awful. But at least this trilogy ended strong with Revenge of the Sith. That was the one where everyone agreed, like, yes, this right here, this is good. So, although the trilogy got off to an extremely rocky start, it at least ended strong. Then 7 years later, after a whole lot of nothing, well, he did have all the Clone Wars stuff with the animated movie and stuff, but nothing that super major. George Lucas decides to sell Lucasfilm to Disney for, I forgot how much, $4 or $5 billion? A lot of money. So Disney got to work on making some movies. They're going to make a new trilogy. And they're going to do some anthology movies. Some, like, in-betweeners. Like, in between the episodes. And the first new Star Wars movie they made was The Force Awakens. And I think it's safe to say it was probably the most anticipated movie of all time. I remember the hype for that movie being off the chain. Everyone was just drooling over any information they could get. Like, it was crazy. The movie came out. Audiences liked it, critics liked it. The fans were a bit iffy on it, but they were just like, it was alright. But box office wise, oh my god. It destroyed all the records. And that movie, still to this day, is the biggest, highest grossing domestic movie of all time. Not even Endgame could beat that. With over 900 million domestic. So everyone agreed Star Wars was back. And the next year, you had our first anthology movie, Rogue One. And Rogue One was also well received by critics, fans, audiences, and made a lot of money, over $1 billion. So Star Wars was doing great. At this time, everyone thought that Star Wars was invincible. It was untouchable. Nothing could stop it. Then The Last Jedi happened. While it made a lot of money, it made people mad. Very mad. Critics loved it, apparently, but some audiences just didn't care, but fans had a whole different reaction. Like, a lot of fans hated that movie, and they made it very clear, they were very vocal about their distaste for the movie, and instead of the filmmakers, like Ryan Johnson, who made that movie, and Kathleen Kennedy, who runs Lucasfilm right now, for the time being, Instead of acting like adults, they decided to call anyone who didn't like The Last Jedi a man baby. They're intimidated by women. They're racist, sexist, misogynistic, cousin humping basement dwellers and stuff. Like, pretty horrible stuff. And so, fans, a lot of them were just like, okay, you know what? That's it. We're done with you. Goodbye. Because the next movie after Last Jedi, Solo, tanked. It tanked hard. It was the worst performing Star Wars movie in history. And now we're at Rise of Skywalker, the final movie of this new trilogy and the final movie of the Skywalker saga. All the trilogies combined, because the prequel trilogy was all about Anakin, the original trilogy was all about Luke, and this new trilogy is all about Rey, everyone's favorite Jedi. So, yeah. That's the whole saga in a nutshell. Now we got that out of the way, let's actually talk about Rise of Skywalker. Let's talk about its pros and its cons, because there are quite a lot of cons, especially now. So let's get to it. But there are pros, believe it or not. So, pros. I mean, Star Wars is still Star Wars at the end of the day. I mean, sure, Solo happened, but some people will just write that off as like an anomaly. Like, oh, that was just a coincidence. That can't happen again. We'll see about that. But Star Wars is such a big brand that, like for certain brands, like it's gonna take more than one flop to kill it. I mean, the MCU. Well, the MCU never really had this problem. But even Captain Marvel, despite having a very bleh reception by a lot of fans, I mean, it still made money at the end of the day. So, I mean, if that movie can make money, this can make money too. Theoretically. So it doesn't matter like how poorly received Last Jedi was, how much money Solo lost. Like, if the normies, as they call it, people who aren't really super hardcore into Star Wars, they just like seeing movies because it's a big movie, it's a huge movie. Like, if they show up, this movie's gonna be fine. But that's not a guarantee. And I'll explain soon enough. So that's the first pro. Second pro, there's no real competition. I mean, there's Jumanji. There's Cats. I doubt Cats is going to be competition to anything. And there won't be a big movie in the market until, what? Doolittle in January? And that movie's looking like a mega flop. Well, I guess Bad Boys 3, Bad Boys for Life could be competition. And 1917 has potential. But, yeah, Star Wars doesn't have anything big to go up against for at least the next few weeks. So that's a pro. What else can I say that's a pro? It's kind of hard. uh, I can't think of anything else. That's it. That's all I got. Okay, cons. The reviews are not good at all. Now, with the other Star Wars movies, yes, including Last Jedi, they're all reviewed very well. I mean, Force Awakens got like in the 92. Rogue One was like in the 80s. Last Jedi was like at a 90. Even Solo was at like a 70 something. But Rise of Skywalker is in the 50s. So last I checked, it's like a 58. That's terrible, especially for a series as iconic as this. Like, that's the second worst score for a Star Wars movie. The only movie that did worse was Phantom Menace. Yeah, that bad. And like, you would think, like, I've been seeing like a lot of videos saying like, oh, people are getting paid off by Disney or like certain studios to say nice things about a movie. That way they get, all this special treatment and a bunch of influencers. I hate influencers. They are the worst people. I hate them. But I thought the same would apply here. I thought they would just give it positive reviews, but nope. It's negative. So you never want to have negative reviews before your movie comes out because most people, because like the Rotten Tomatoes score is going to be on Fandango. So if people want to buy tickets to Rise of Skywalker, they're going to see that score on there and they're going to be like, I don't know, pass. So those reviews are going to hurt a lot. Like they really are. Another con is this is a sequel to a movie that pissed off millions of people. Like, I mean, when it comes to this situation where you have a poorly received predecessor, like you want to do your best to course correct. You want to do your best to make things right. And if you don't, well, it's just over. You might as well just cancel your movie because it's not going to end well. Because Last Jedi, I mean, sure, I know some of you out there like The Last Jedi. I don't have a problem with it. Personally, I don't think the movie is that bad, but it has some serious flaws. I will say that it has some fatal flaws. But overall, I didn't think it was that bad. But again, it has some pretty bad flaws. But you can't just ignore people. Like this goes for any series. Like you can't just ignore your fans and be like, just pretend like, oh, they hated this certain movie. They're toxic. They're just toxic fans. They're not real fans. Right? You can't do that because if you're doing that, it's just basically like you're just saying F you to your customers. Like, who would do that? Like, anyone in business knows you never do that. Because you're just gonna lose business, you're gonna lose money, and then like a few years later, boom, you're done. You're out of business. That's how it works. Like you never take your fans for granted ever, because they're the reason why this series is so big. They're the reason why Star Wars was once the untouchable series. All right, but now it's in shambles. Because Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, they treated a lot of these fans just terribly. They treat them like hot garbage. They treated George Lucas like hot garbage. Like, even Bob Iger in his book, apparently he said George Lucas felt betrayed when they basically threw away his sequel, George Lucas's sequel trilogy. They're just like, man, screw this trilogy. We making our own trilogy. And yeah, that had to irk a lot of people because and it irks me too. And I'm not even a hardcore Star Wars fan, and that irks me. And George Lucas wasn't even invited to the premiere. Like you don't invite the dude who made Star Wars possible to the premiere. Like that just feels like such a slap to the face. Like just spitting on his legacy. Like I'm moving on. I'm just getting kind of angry about it right now. But another con with this movie is the fact that Solo came out before this. And I just love how a lot of news people, a lot of online articles, they just love to ignore the fact that Solo was one of the biggest bombs of last year. They just like, oh, Solo? What was that? No one remembers Solo. But I do. A lot of people do. Because it was the first Star Wars movie to lose money. Like, you can't forget that. And actually, now I think about it, Star Wars, it's not just Star Wars. A couple of series thought they were invincible for a while. Transformers, they thought they could do no wrong. Even if they made crap movies, they would make hundreds of millions of dollars. They make, heck, billions of dollars. They were doing great. But eventually, the people said no. And The Last Night, which came out in 2017, same year as The Last Jedi, tanked. Tanked so bad that Paramount had to course correct with Bumblebee, and now they're on a bit of a better path. And then there's the DCEU. They thought they were invincible, despite having movies like Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad, movies that were just trashed by a lot of people. But they did have Wonder Woman, and everyone was like, "Oh, they're on the, this is great. They need to continue down this path." And then Justice League happened, and then everything fell apart. Justice League bombed too, and it also came out in 2017. You see a pattern here? Last Night, Justice League, and Last Jedi all came out the same year. And both those series, they were forced to course correct. DCU had to do Aquaman, Shazam, and Joker, and soon Wonder Woman 1984. And now they're on a better path. But Star Wars doesn't really have a future outside of The Mandalorian and like some of their other shows like Kenobi and the Clone Wars Season 7. Like, they don't have much of a future in the movies. I mean, supposedly they have that trilogy, but Benioff and Weiss from Game of Thrones fame, they walked out. They were like, no, we're not doing this. We're gone. So that trilogy is kind of up in the air right now. Maybe Ryan Johnson can take it, but I doubt it. And most people wouldn't be happy about it. Because, like, if Ryan Johnson just sticks with films like Knives Out, he'll be fine. But if he tries going near Star Wars again, he's going to get torn apart. Believe me. So, yeah. Star Wars is in a very vulnerable state right now. It can't afford any more losses. It can't afford any more embarrassments. And I think this is going to be another embarrassment. And if it is, it just becomes another Solo-like flop. It's lights out for Kathleen Kennedy. She's done. She ain't getting her contract renewed. She's gone. She's out. Because I can't see her staying if this movie does tank. And a lot of people are saying that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni should take over. Like, Jon Favreau should be like the business side, Dave Filoni the creative side. That would be great. That would solve a lot of problems. Because, recently we got The Mandalorian. A lot of people love that show. And it gave us Baby Yoda, which, who has become a meme god. Like that show is like the one bright spot Star Wars has right now. That and Jedi Fallen Order was a very well received game. I mean, they got those two things. And and of course, upcoming season 7 of Clone Wars and Kenobi. Like, those are looking good. But the movies, it's just so bleak at this point. Especially with this. Because, I mean, I'm going to talk about a bit about the movies. A bit. But, like, our main character, Rey, what is there to care about her? I mean, she's become invincible at this point. Like, what are her flaws? What are her weaknesses? Like, if a character has no flaws or weaknesses and just runs through everything like nothing, why should I care? Why should anybody care? Because she's gonna win no matter what. And like, if you want to make like a good character, they need to struggle at least a few times. If they never struggle, then what's the point? And then you got Kylo Ren here, who should be an intimidating villain, but he's become a meme too, with his shirtless Kylo Ren, which I'll admit was a good meme. But and then like the whole Reylo thing, just why? Then all the other characters are pretty much useless at this point. And poor John Boyega's Finn. Like, you'd think Finn would be a big deal in episode 7. Because, his story arc was kind of interesting. He was a stormtrooper, and, he turned good. Like, that was interesting. And then they did nothing with him. He did nothing. Nothing. And Poe Dameron, forget him. Why is he even here? And then the rest of the original trilogy characters are either dead, humiliated, or useless too. So, yeah, and then like they're bringing back Palpatine, and JJ, he said, "Oh, it was the plan all along," but that's a lie. That's an absolute lie. I can tell that's a lie, because it was clearly damage control for Last Jedi. Because in Last Jedi they killed off Snoke, and you're just like, well, great. Who's the main villain now? What are you gonna do? So they just bring back someone from the past because nostalgia. And just this movie, I just You know what? Let's just end this because I'm tired talking about this movie. It's just making me mad. It's just making me madder and madder. How Lucasfilm decided just screwed up so much with this. It's amazing how badly they messed this up. And yeah, so opening weekend, I don't know. It could go multiple ways. There's a chance this could, do okay, and then there's a chance that this could become another Solo. So I'm going to pick somewhere in the middle. And I'm going to say it's going to make the highest I can do is an opening weekend of 170. And the lowest I can go is 130. If it goes lower than that, actually I wouldn't be shocked because there have been plenty of times this year where I think my prediction is low, but then the actual box office is lower. That's happened plenty of times, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again. So the highest I can go for opening weekend is 170. Lowest is 130. Overall total, I'm going to say, because Christmas again can be really wonky. 400, 400 plus. If it doesn't reach that, you know what? It needs to make more than Revenge of the Sith. It has to. That movie came out 14 years ago without 3D, without IMAX. Well, I think it was an IMAX. I forget. But ticket prices were a lot lower back then. If it can't make more than that, then it's over. Like, this movie needs to make $1 billion. Like, if it doesn't, then it's going to be viewed as a failure. Just like how I view Justice League as a failure for not reaching $1 billion. Just like I view Batman v Superman as a failure for not making $1 billion. Some movies have to make $1 billion in order to really justify themselves. And if this doesn't make $1 billion, then that's it. Modern Star Wars is over. At least on the movie side. I mean, they still got the TV stuff, but in terms of movies, it's over. You can forget about it. They might go full on reboot. They might retcon this whole thing. Who knows? But yeah, the future of Star Wars overall is looking pretty darn bleak, and it's sad. I mean, a lot of people find this funny, and I understand why. It's fun watching just a series just implode, because I've seen that plenty of times this year. I saw it with X-Men, Men in Black, Terminator. It was, for those, it was a lot more comedic, but this is just sad. It really is. It's amazing how far this series has fallen. It's kind of depressing. So that's Rise of Skywalker. All my thoughts about it out of the way. I know that was long, but I mean, there was a lot to talk about. I couldn't, skip certain things because it's important. So, next up, got Little Women, Spies in Disguise, Uncut Gems. And then that's the end of 2019. And then we're on 2020. And yeah. So that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment. Want to check out some of my other holiday predictions. I have a playlist up on the homepage. Check that out. And yeah, that's it. I am out.